For 40 years, David never missed a single deposit. He saved through 2 recessions, 3 presidents, and 1 divorce. He did everything the experts told him to do. And at 65, when he finally sat down to retire, his financial advisor looked at the numbers, paused, and said the words David would never forget. "You can't stop working yet." This is the story of a man who followed every rule and still ran out of road. And by the end, you'll understand the one mistake that quietly erased 40 years of discipline. His name was David. Born in 1960 in a small town in Michigan, he was not flashy. He was not greedy. He was the kind of man who clipped coupons, drove the same car for 15 years, and felt a small jolt of guilt every time he bought something he didn't strictly need. At 25, David got a stable job at an insurance company. The pay was modest, around $30,000 a year to start. But David had one quality most people don't: discipline. Real, boring, unglamorous discipline. From his very first paycheck, he saved 10% every single month, no exceptions. While his coworkers bought boats and upgraded houses, David put money away. He told himself a simple story: if I just keep saving, one day I'll be free. And for a long time, it looked like he was right. By 40, David had a comfortable cushion. By 50, he had what most people would call a small fortune in his savings account. He felt proud. He felt safe. He had done what almost nobody does. He had resisted temptation for decades. But here is where the story quietly turns. David had a fear. A deep, lifelong fear of losing money. He had watched his own father lose a chunk of his savings in a market crash when David was a boy. He never forgot the look on his father's face. So David made a decision early on. He would never gamble. He would never risk his money in the stock market. He would keep everything safe, in cash, in the bank, where nothing bad could ever happen to it. It felt responsible. It felt wise. It was the most expensive decision of his life. Because while David's money sat safely in the bank, something invisible was eating it. Slowly. Quietly. Every single year. That something was inflation. Let me show you what really happened. In 1985, David had saved his first $10,000. That $10,000 could buy a decent used car, cover almost a year of rent, or fund a real family vacation with money to spare. David felt that $10,000 was real wealth. Now follow that same $10,000 forward. By 2025, because of inflation, that same $10,000 had the buying power of roughly $4,000. It didn't shrink on paper, the number still said 10,000, but what it could actually buy had more than halved. The money was still there. The value had quietly walked out the door, and this was happening to every dollar David saved, every year for 40 years. Meanwhile, 3 desks down sat a man named Mike. Same company, same salary. But Mike was different. Mike was not more disciplined than David. In fact, he saved a little less. But Mike did one thing David refused to do. He invested. Every month, Mike put his savings into a simple, boring index fund that tracked the whole American stock market. He didn't pick stocks. He didn't time the market. He didn't even check it often. He just kept buying, month after month, year after year, through every crash and every boom. When the market dropped, Mike felt sick, just like everyone else. But he didn't sell. He held on. And here is what time did to those 2 choices. David's money, kept safe in cash, earned almost nothing. Over 40 years, his savings barely kept pace with the rising cost of living and often fell behind it. He saved an enormous amount, but it sat still while the world got more expensive around it. Mike's money, invested in the market, did something David's never could. It compounded. The American market, on average, roughly doubled in value about every 7 to 10 years. Mike's money grew on top of its own growth. The gains made gains. The snowball rolled downhill and picked up speed. By 65, the difference was staggering. David, who saved more and spent less for 40 years, had a savings account that looked big on paper but could barely fund a modest retirement. Mike, who saved less but invested, had several times more real wealth, money that could actually carry him through 20 or 30 years of not working. 2 men, same job, same salary, same start. One feared the market and lost. One accepted the risk and won. Not because Mike was smarter, but because Mike understood one thing David never did. Doing nothing with your money is not safe. It is one of the riskiest things you can do. David didn't lose his money in a dramatic crash. Nobody stole it. He didn't make a bad bet. His money was eaten, one quiet percent at a time, by the slow tax that nobody warns you about. He protected his savings from the small risk of a market drop and in doing so exposed it to the far bigger risk of standing still. When David sat across from that financial advisor at 65, the math was brutal. To keep the lifestyle he had, his savings would run dry in about 12 years. He would be 77, possibly out of money, in a world that only gets more expensive. The advisor's words were quiet, but they landed like a hammer. You can't stop working yet. 40 years of sacrifice. 40 years of saying no to things he wanted. And the finish line had moved because the money he was racing to save was quietly losing value the entire time he saved it. But this story is not here to make you feel hopeless. It's here to make sure you don't repeat it. Because David's mistake is one of the most common, most understandable mistakes in the world, and it is completely avoidable. The lesson hiding inside David's life is simple, and almost nobody says it plainly. Saving money and growing money are two different things. Saving is the first step. It is necessary. But saving alone with the money sitting in cash is like filling a bucket that has a slow leak in the bottom. You can pour in water for 40 years and still find the bucket half empty. What David needed was not more discipline. He had more discipline than almost anyone. What he needed was for his money to work as hard as he did. He needed it to grow, not just sit. He needed to understand that the safest looking choice, cash in the bank, was quietly the most dangerous one. So if you are saving right now, proud of every dollar you set aside, ask yourself one honest question. Is your money growing, or is it just sitting still, slowly losing value while you sleep? Because the cruelest part of David's story is not that he failed to save. He saved more than almost everyone. The cruelest part is that he did the hard thing, the sacrifice, the discipline, the decades of saying no and still ended up short, all because of one quiet decision he made out of fear when he was young. You don't have to be a genius to avoid David's fate. You don't have to pick the perfect stock or get lucky. You just have to understand that money left alone does not stay still. It either grows or it slowly disappears. David spent 40 years protecting his money from the wrong danger. The market wasn't the thing that was going to hurt him. Time was. And time, unlike the market, never has a bad year off. It just keeps going, quietly, whether your money is growing with it or being left behind. So the real question was never how much David saved. The real question was whether his money was alive, or whether it was slowly dying in a place he thought was safe. And that is a question you still have time to answer.